The American cowboy is a lie built by dime novels and Hollywood to sell a cheap fantasy of rugged independence. You have been sold a myth of stoic heroes riding noble steeds into golden sunsets. We are going to tear that myth apart. We are replacing the cinematic legend with the visceral, rotting reality of a lice-infested, malnourished teenage laborer dying of exposure in the mud. It is the late summer of 1871. You are standing at the edge of the stockyards in Abilene, Kansas. This is the end of the Chisholm Trail. The air is thick, choked with dust and the inescapable stench of 100,000 terrified, defecating Texas longhorns. You are exhausted, starving, and covered in your own filth. There is no romance here. There is only raw capitalism, physical agony, and a desperately short life expectancy. If you want to know what it actually costs to bring beef to the East Coast, you have to look at the blood in the dirt. You are going to feel the reality of the trail, and you will never watch a Western the same way again. Abilene in 1871 is not a picturesque frontier town. It is a hastily constructed, mud-soaked shanty town built strictly to extract wealth from cattle and the men who drive them. You step off the trail, and your boots sink into a vile sludge. The streets are unpaved, deeply rutted, and flooded with a mixture of stagnant rainwater, horse manure, and human waste. There is no plumbing. There is no sanitation infrastructure. The town exists as a temporary holding pen for livestock, and the smell hits you like a physical blow. It is the suffocating odor of rotting carcasses baking in the Kansas sun, mixed with stale sweat and sulfur. You have spent the last 2 months on horseback. You breathe in pulverized prairie dust every single day. It coats your throat, packs into your nostrils, and turns your spit black. Your lungs burn constantly. The wind tears across the plains without obstruction, carrying blinding grit that leaves your eyes bloodshot and weeping. You sleep on the ground, wrapped in a single wool blanket that offers no protection against the elements. When it rains, you do not seek shelter. You sit in your saddle, soaked to the bone, shivering violently through the night to keep the herd from scattering. The physical environment is actively trying to kill you. The plains are entirely unforgiving. Lightning storms roll across the flat earth with terrifying speed, dropping strikes directly into the herd. You are riding a horse equipped with iron shoes, carrying an iron six-shooter, surrounded by thousands of animals with massive conductive horns. You are a lightning rod in a sea of panicked flesh. When the thunder cracks, the cattle run. A stampede is a chaotic, blind wave of muscle and hooves. If your horse stumbles in the dark, you do not get a dramatic shootout. You are trampled into an unrecognizable smear of bone and tissue before the man riding next to you even hears your scream. There are no search parties if you go missing. There are no marked graves for the men pulverized under the herd. You are simply left where you fall, food for coyotes, while the cattle keep moving toward the railhead. The herd has value. You do not. You endure this environment for $1 a day. You drink from the same muddy creeks where the longhorns urinate. You chew on grit with every bite of food. You suffer from chronic, low-grade dehydration because clean water is a luxury that does not exist on the trail. Your skin is blistered by the sun, cracked by the wind, and chafed raw by the saddle. You exist in a state of perpetual discomfort. The deadliest thing on the trail is not a rustler's bullet, but the half-broken Mustang you are riding, waiting to snap its leg in a prairie dog hole and crush your pelvis miles from anyone who can set a bone. Your body is a breeding ground for parasites. You wear the same heavy wool trousers and flannel shirt for 60 straight days. You do not bathe. You do not wash your clothes. Your garments become stiff with accumulated sweat, animal fat, and trail dust. This creates a perfect, insulated incubator for body lice. Cowboys call them seam squirrels. They nest in the thick seams of your unwashed wool, laying thousands of eggs. You feel them crawling across your skin, biting into your flesh, leaving your torso covered in angry, red welts. You scratch until you bleed, but there is no relief. The only way to kill them is to boil your clothes, an impossible luxury when fuel is scarce and you are working 18-hour days. Your diet is a nutritional wasteland. You survive on black coffee, beans, hard biscuits, and salted pork. Fresh vegetables are entirely absent. You lack basic vitamins. Your gums swell, turn purple, and bleed when you chew. Your teeth loosen in your jaw. You are experiencing the early stages of scurvy. Your digestive system is inflamed from a diet devoid of fiber. You suffer from chronic dysentery, forcing you to squat in the brush while racked with debilitating cramps, losing fluids you cannot afford to replace. Physical labor breaks you down systematically. You spend up to 14 hours a day in a hard leather saddle. The friction strips the skin off your inner thighs and buttocks. These saddle sores become infected, filling with pus and turning every step of your horse into an agonizing jolt. You suffer from severe sleep deprivation. You are expected to ride all day, and then take 2-hour shifts guarding the herd at night. Your reflexes slow down. Your judgment deteriorates. Hallucinations are common. You fall asleep in the saddle, risking a fatal fall if your horse spooks. Medical care does not exist. If you are injured, your survival depends entirely on luck and a brutal tolerance for pain. A broken arm from a bucking bronco is not set by a doctor. It is yanked straight by your fellow hands and bound with a piece of scrap wood. It heals crooked, leaving you permanently crippled. If a horse kicks you in the chest and shatters your ribs, you are strapped into a wagon to endure every agonizing bump on the trail until your punctured lung drowns you in your own blood. Infection is a death sentence. A simple rope burn from wrestling a calf tears the skin on your hands. The wound is immediately packed with dirt, horse sweat, and cattle feces. Bacteria multiply rapidly. Your hand swells to twice its size. Red streaks climb up your forearm. You develop a raging fever. The trail boss carries a saw for this exact scenario. There is no anesthesia. You are pinned to the ground by 3 men, given a rag to bite down on, and your arm is amputated with a blade, sterilized only by a splash of cheap whiskey. Survival rates for crude field amputations are dismal. You are far more likely to die of septic shock days later, screaming in delirium in the back of a supply wagon. Even if you survive the amputation, your career is over. A one-armed cowboy cannot rope, ride, or brand. You are left at the nearest settlement with a few dollars, permanently disabled, unemployable, and entirely alone. Your physical body is the only currency you have, and the trail spends it ruthlessly. The trail boss you trust to lead you to Kansas is not your protector. He is a corporate middleman who will order you into a flooded river to save the herd, then deduct the cost of your burial shroud from your final wages. The most pervasive myth of the American West is the image of the cowboy as a fiercely independent, gunslinging rebel. You are not a rebel. You are a violently exploited gig worker operating at the absolute bottom of a massive corporate supply chain. The cattle you risk your life to move do not belong to you. They are owned by wealthy syndicates and Eastern investors who view both the animals and the men driving them as highly expendable assets. You do not carry a pair of pearl-handled revolvers. Handguns are heavy and notoriously inaccurate. If you carry a weapon, it is an old rifle used strictly for shooting snakes or putting down a broken horse. When you finally reach Abilene, the town marshals immediately confiscate your firearms. Gun control in 1871 Kansas is absolute. The legendary frontier shootouts are a fiction designed to sell dime novels. The real violence of the era is not dealt by outlaws. It is structural. It is the systemic disregard for human life in the pursuit of profit. When you arrive at a swollen, raging river, the trail boss does not hesitate. The cattle must cross. You are ordered into the freezing, turbulent water on horseback to guide the herd. The current catches your horse. You are swept under a churning mass of panicked, drowning cattle. You are kicked, trampled, and pushed to the river bottom. Dozens of young men drown at river crossings every single season because a delay would cost the syndicate money. This brutal reality is magnified if you are not white. Historical records show that at least 1 in 4 cowboys on the trail was black. You are likely a former slave, freed by the end of the Civil War just a few years earlier, only to find that the only work available is the most dangerous, back-breaking labor on the frontier. If you are a black cowboy, you are handed the most violent, unbroken horses. You are forced to take the first position into the flooded rivers. You eat last. You sleep furthest from the fire. You do the exact same grueling labor as the white hands, but you are paid significantly less. You endure the constant, suffocating threat of racial violence in every town you pass through. Mexican vaqueros face the same brutal exploitation. Indigenous men whose lands have been violently stolen to make way for these very cattle trails are hired as cheap, disposable labor. You teach white settlers how to survive the plains, and in return, you are treated as subhuman. You are pushed to the absolute margins, doing the jobs no one else will survive. The structure of this economy ensures you will never escape it. When you finally reach Abilene and receive your pay, the entire town is engineered to strip it from you. Saloons and rigged gambling halls are owned by the same men who bought the cattle. You are paid $30 for months of agony. You spend it in 3 days trying to wash away the trauma of the trail. You wake up in an alley, penniless, sick, and starving. You have no property. You have no savings. You have only the clothes on your back and the lice in your seams. You have no choice but to sign on for another drive, heading back south into the dirt. You are trapped in a cycle of poverty and physical destruction. You are a piece of machinery, designed to be worn out, broken, and replaced. The syndicate does not mourn you. The trail boss hires another desperate teenager to take your saddle. The massive profits flow eastward to men who have never smelled a longhorn, never slept in the mud, and never felt the absolute terror of a midnight stampede. You bleed into the Kansas dirt so a banker in New York can eat a steak. We look at the cowboy as a symbol of American freedom, but that freedom was entirely illusory. The men who built the cattle industry did not ride off into golden sunsets. They died of sepsis in the backs of wagons, drowned in muddy rivers, and froze to death on the open prairie. They were chewed up by a system that valued livestock over human life. Look at the clean water running from your tap. Look at the bottle of antibiotics in your medicine cabinet. Look at the standard 40-hour work week and the safety regulations that keep you from being crushed to death at your job. These things exist because the world used to be a meat grinder. The men who drove cattle to Abilene in 1871 had none of these protections. They were isolated, exploited, and left to rot when they broke. The next time you see a polished, silver-screen cowboy drawing a six-shooter to defend his honor, remember the reality of the trail. Remember the smell of rotting carcasses, the agony of scurvy, and the desperate, freezing river crossings. The freedom they sold you was just a marketing campaign for a graveyard. Tell me in the comments what era or historical myth we need to tear down next. Subscribe to the channel because history is not a fairy tale, and we are not done with the truth.